what the heck are you all doing here? And don't worry, the jokes get worse. I use that joke over and over and over and over, and you'll be so sick of it by the time you leave, you'll want to buy me a beer. You should do that anyway later on. Anyway, I'll apologize if I kind of hack up a lung as well. I'm a bit sick, as Drupal flu often infects a lot of us around these events. I hope I don't spread it to anybody else. But, ooh, gotta turn the Twitter off. And yes, I call it the Twitter. Because I'm crazy like that. Anyway, welcome to What the Heck. Hopefully, you're all in the right room, otherwise you should leave. You're here for this. Just a little bit about me to start, just to kind of loosen the things in. My name is Jeni Tehan. I work under the name of Delicious Creative, or that's the name of the company that I do, and just some random facts about me, because I like sharing random facts about me. I really like spicy food. I actually have hot sauce in my bag with me that I brought with me. So if lunch was a bit bland for you guys, you should have come up to me and borrowed my hot sauce. You can do it tomorrow, especially for the little tuna ones, but a hot sauce on there is really good. I like to go hiking. Over the summer I spent a lot of time exploring the South Downs, which is lovely, and only like a 10-minute bus ride north of here, where I got to meet many, many sheep along the way. Was followed by one for about a mile once that kept going "Rah!" at me, like it wanted me to like reunite it with his friends. I was having no part of that. I once met Ghostface Killah from the Wu-Tang Clan. I didn't try to. We went to go see him in Liverpool. We were hanging out front finishing our beers, and then him and his entourage came out. I was with a few friends, and they tried to get us to go back to their hotel. And we were like, no, come to the pub. They didn't come to the pub, and we didn't go to the hotel. It was still pretty cool, though. He's a really nice guy. You wouldn't think of it. You think Wu-Tang, and they're all hard and whatnot. Totally cool. And I once got Mr. T's autograph. My dad went to like Toronto one time, and he came back. This is when I was a kid. He used to travel a lot. And he came back with this business card just signed Mr. T. And I always wondered if it was real or not, because my dad's, my surname is Tehan. So my dad is technically, Mr. T. So I always wonder if he just kind of signed it himself. I guess obviously he's not my father. So on to the real stuff, the Drupal stuff. What is an entity? Now it's time for audience participation. Can anybody define what an entity is? Yes?
It's a fieldable thing.
Okay. Good answer. That answer comes up every time, which is why it's the first one in mind. Anybody else? This is kind of the definition I've come up with. I think it makes sense. A unique representation of a collection of data. Kind of works for me. It's a thing. It's something that you need to store. It's something that you might want to get somewhere else. It's something that you need to build in for some reason and put fields on and expose to views and rules and all the other fun stuff. But it's something unique, and you can use them any way you like, and this is what this is about. And core comes with lots of entity types. We have nodes, users, and taxonomy terms are very kind of easy ones that everybody kind of knows about. And in contrib, there are lots more. There's beans, profile 2 profiles, media. If you use media module, every time you upload a file, it creates a file entity, so there's a unique kind of entity that stores the information about that file. And if you've ever used commerce, pretty much everything in commerce is an entity, which is a pretty fantastic example of the power of Drupal entities and how they can be used. Because everything in commerce, which was a great kind of, in 7 was a nice departure from, say, UberCart in Drupal 6, if anybody ever used that, which was done very non-Drupal-y. How commerce uses entities in Drupal 7 is great because everything else, all the admin screens are views, you can add fields to things, they integrate with rules. So there's very, very flexible, as every Drupal system should be. We don't want to be locked into one thing and modify it. We want to create the ways of storing data and using data the way that we want to use them on our specific sites. So entities are whatever you want them to be. It's up to you. Anybody know what that entity is? Oh, come on.
Star Trek?
Yeah, it's the crystalline entity. It feeds on the lives of planets. I just threw that in there for fun. It doesn't really mean anything. So entities are all around us, but there's no need to scream. You're not home alone. Drupal is a community, and we're all here to help. And hopefully you'll learn something from this. I'm not going to guarantee you'll learn anything, but hopefully you will. So just to clarify, we have entity types. And this just to clarify slide is probably the most confusing slide I have. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to shout them out. We have entity types. So we have nodes, users, and say taxonomy terms. Nodes are our main content. And you can have different kind of subsets of that, which we have, which are called bundles. Now, I'll back up before that. You attach properties to each entity type, such as a title, an author, a created date. Those are then shared amongst all the bundles of that entity type. And then from there, you add fields to it. You add fields to the actual bundles, not to the entity type itself. And with entity types, you don't have to have multiple bundles, but you do usually have to have one. So for example, taxonomy terms, you only have a taxonomy term, entity, and bundle. You don't have a taxonomy term and then have a different term types like you would for content types. But for nodes, you have as many content types as you like. So you have the overall node entity type, and then your article is a bundle. Your basic page is a bundle. And then from there, you attach your fields to the bundles, and that's how you can have different unique things per. So that's enough because I don't think I explained it that well. If you need more information, Google it. There's lots of other information out there. So why do you want to use custom entities? Actually, I'm kidding. You don't have to be nuts. They're really easy, and there's a lot of use cases for them, especially when you just think about storing all of your data in content types. Nodes shouldn't store everything. They're for your front-facing content, not for a lot of other stuff. So not everything should be in Node. Because we should say no to Frankenblocks. We don't want to force something into something else. And sorry for any WordPress folks that are in the room. Every time this debate comes up, I say WordPress is a fantastic system, but I don't want to bastardize it into something else. I want to use Drupal, where I get to decide what the system architecture is like for my sites, instead of taking something or bits of something and turning it into something else. I call that a Frankenblock. So nodes are meant for content. These are your articles, your content types, things along those lines. But what if you just want to have, say, I don't know, a place for your clients to store a phone number and an email address that might be used various places throughout the system? You put that in a content type, and you want to expose that information to views. I mean, it's easy enough to create like a configuration page, save those as variables, and get them up when you want to, but that's not going to expose them to views. So if you want to have some sort of global settings or something like that, you'd think, oh, maybe I'll put it in a content type. But you're never going to want to show that on its own. You're never going to want to just say, hey, look at this thing. You're going to want to use that embedded in other things. So keep nodes for the content that is always meant to be shown on its own. Nodes also have a lot of functionality built into them, like comments. They're searchable. Those are the big two things. You don't really need comments on some sort of configuration page or something along those lines. And a lot of stuff that we're going to store, in some examples I'll show, in these custom entities, you would never want to see them on their own, and you never want them to show up in search index. And there's ways of getting things out of the search index, which are mostly a bit of a pain. They do work, but why put something in there that shouldn't be in there at all? So we don't want to force our content into nodes. Let's make some other things with it. And just because you can do it with a node doesn't mean you should. Back in D5 and D6, I've been doing Drupal since D5. We didn't really have a choice. So if we needed to store some sort of data, no matter what we wanted to do, unless we wanted to write our own modules to store this sort of stuff, we stuck everything into content types. And you still can, and sometimes there's good use cases for that. But just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. Once again, this is Drupal. Let's not force something into something else. Let's make what we need to store our data. And it also gets rid of the node cruft, because since nodes have all these things built into them, they end up with loads of other stuff that we just don't need. For example, I tend to put all of my fields in a lot of vertical tabs. It's an easy way to kind of manage things. That's another session. If you want to learn more about that, Google Tasty Backend. I swear it's a safe thing to Google. And I'm quite proud that I'm the results that come up when you Google Tasty Backend. So my mom's really proud of that as well, just in case. But as you can see, we have additional settings like menu settings, URL path settings, revision info, breadcrumb info, comments, meta tags, author, published. Bits that we're going to need for custom entities, we don't need any of that. So why do we need to confuse our users with all these other things that are on the screen that people are just going to have to ignore when we don't need to store any of that data at all? So it gets rid of that sort of stuff. So to recap, custom entities are great when it's never shown on its own. There might be something that only appears in the sidebar or is only ever referenced. A good example of those might be, say, testimonials. A lot of websites use testimonials in the footer or in a sidebar or somewhere along the way, but they won't necessarily have a full page that just lists testimonials. So you're never going to want to see those on their own, or you're never going to want to actually just click something and go, I want to read this entire testimonial. And you look at the full version when there's no point in it. So that's a good kind of example of something that might go good into a custom entity type. Things like benefits. I've made a few e-commerce shops over the years, and quite often for various products, they will share certain types of benefits, like this comes in size large, this is this will give you magic powers. And various products in your store might all share those same benefits. So do you want to give your clients fields on each product to fill those out over and over and over again, or give them one place to fill that out, a custom entity, and then they can all reference that entity from their products, which also means that say you have 1,000 products in your shop that all shares 3 benefits of that product. What if you need to update those 3? You can use fuse bulk operations and mass update things, but that's messy. And your clients might be scared of bulk updating things, and things can go wrong, quite frankly. If you're using references to these individual little benefits, you can then reference the one thing, change the one thing, and it will globally change everywhere. Smart use of Drupal as a CMS, because that's what it's good at. So otherwise, you often fight against the system. It's always in a sidebar, same kinds of things, benefits. Other than that, nothing that's ever meant to be seen on its own. And much like the benefits that I just described, its primary use case is to be referenced from something else. So if you're creating some sort of data that you're never going to show on its own, once again, it's always being used in something else through something like entity reference. Custom entity types are a great way of using that. Or things are, once again, like I said earlier, places for clients to put little bits of config. I've got a good example of that coming up. And you want to componentize your website. Building small things and putting them back together is something that Drupal excels at immensely, and is a smart way to build a lot of websites. So when you're looking at a final one rendered page in a system, you might have slideshow slides coming in from one place, testimonials from other, benefits from another, and then the main unique content for that particular piece of content you have maybe in the center or somewhere else. So everything else kind of comes in at the very last minute, but the only unique part of that is what is only unique to that node. Everything else comes from elsewhere. And nodes will be nodes. So let's just kind of let them be nodes. So the benefits of using ECK: free power. If you need to store some data that you don't want shown on your own, like I keep saying, and you want to have views integration or something along those lines, you're not going to get it with just a configuration screen saving variables. But if you use Drupal's entity system, and ECK gives you a UI to do that, you get exposure to views, rules, all the fields you want, and everything else that works with Drupal entities. So install this module, start using it, and you have all of that stuff for free. No need to write views integration, no need to open up anything to rules or any other popular contrib modules. It will just work, which is sweet. You have access to every single field out there, all the stuff in core, all the stuff in contrib. Everything works with entities, so if you need an address field, or if you need a currency field, or whatever other multitudes of fields that are out there, you have access to it. You can immediately put that stuff on your custom entities. They can be referenced, once again, componentizing websites, or just any other way you want to use references. References are incredibly powerful, and these are entities, so you can reference them. Views integration, I mentioned, and access control. Access control in Drupal can be a bit weird. Access control modules sometimes work great, but if you need kind of multiple levels of access or anything kind of complicated, you don't want to combine multiple kind of access control modules. But with ECK, you have fine-grained access control of who can view, edit, delete each of your entities, entity bundles, all of that stuff. And that's just on the permissions page, like anything else. Tick your boxes, and you're done. And anything else that's going to work with entities will work with these. So once again, it's a common thing to Drupal. This is just a way of getting all these entity power into your site. So what can we do with this sort of stuff? For some reason, I recreated taxonomy. When I was originally writing this, I was in the bath, and I think like a lot of people, I get my best thinking done kind of in the bath. And I thought this was a good idea. Not necessarily because, well, it's a good idea as a demo. It's not a good necessarily idea of what you might want to do with things. But it's a good example of the power of this. So we'll go through a bit of an example. Oh, that's showing up right. Yeah, cool. So, for example, taxonomy normally, we will have our normal kind of vocabularies here. Here I have miscellaneous, because I couldn't be bothered coming up with a better name. And we have tags, which is the default, excuse me, which is the default vocabulary when you're installing Drupal from a standard profile. If we go over to this site here, though, this is a custom menu I made. I was looking for taxi numbers earlier. And if we go to vocabularies here, we'll see meat. Now that's completely different, but this looks strikingly close to that, doesn't it? This is actually a view, and this is an entity type here of meat. So to kind of explain where that comes from, if we go to entity types, we'll see we have a vocabulary one here. And in here, we have this meat vocabulary. So as far as this goes, if we want to add another vocabulary, it works just like Drupal's core taxonomy. And we can add a new one. And since we're in Brighton, we can't only have a meat vocabulary. We have to allow a vegetarian option. It's the law. It's not really the law, but for our purposes here it is. So we've got vegetables, and I totally misspelled that. Bit of nerves, I guess. So once again, this is working just like this. We have another vocabulary. And in this meat, we'll show that we have some terms here: beef, chicken, pork, lamb, whatever. Same thing with vegetables, we have nothing. Once again, this is a view. This is not, and I didn't write any code to do any of this. This is a view. There may have been a small bit. So we can have carrots. And we can have celery. Now I kind of want a salad. But that's as far as I'm going to go. And this looks strikingly familiar, doesn't it? On top of that, if we go back to our vocab and we look at some of these terms, this acts just like core taxonomy pages, where we're now seeing all the nodes that are tagged with beef. So if we edit this one here, we'll see just like any other kind of term reference field, we can change this one to chicken. And away we go. Much like core taxonomy. And once again, this is just an example because this is all done through views and rules primarily. To be able to create all these screens, all the admin screens, even the menu items are created through rules and things like that. So this is just some of the power that ECK can give you with that. Where are my slides? Here we go. So other candidates that might actually be good. I guess I jumped the gun on here and have already kind of covered some of this stuff. But testimonials, once again, really good. Item benefits, as I mentioned. Images. You might say, okay, well, media module and file entity module already create entities per image I upload if you're using those as an image solution. But you only get one type in media for each type of media. So when you initially install a media module, you'll have an image type, a document type, an audio type, and a video type. Now you can extend that with your other ones, but you only get one per. You can only assign, I'm pretty sure, you can only assign one, let's say, MIME type, like a JPEG, to the image, and then that would be that. So, but what if you have different types of images that you want to categorize differently or put different fields on? I make a lot of dating websites, which is weird. They're all sales sites, but we often have kind of lists of members and other images in the system for people to be able to choose. And to categorize those, I often, not all the time, but I often create custom entity types for them. So I can have different fields for them. So when the people managing these sites need to drill down, or we need to use views or something to pull out those images, we have really unique data for each one of those images. If we were only relying on media module, all of the images would share the same fields. But in the dating site example, I might have groups of member images that I want to use on pages, or we might want to have 3 or 4 separate fields on. And I might have blog images, where we don't need any fields. So when somebody uploads or adds a blog image, I don't want them to have to go through the same rigmarole of fields as I would for the member images. So creating custom entity types for those is a good way of getting around that. And then when people need to use those, we just use entity reference back and forth. It pulls in those images, and once again, that's componentized. So if we have cropping set on that image or anything else, you go to the entity that represents that image, you change the cropping, and it changes it anywhere else that you need to. It also means that you can have multiple entities for the same image if you need to. So say you wanted to store different croppings for different entities in there, you can do so. And small bits of config, which I believe I have an example called commerce quantity option sets. Now I think this is a classic case of Drupal where I needed to implement, I have an example here of an e-commerce shop. We can choose between downloaded and printed products. And if you select printed, you'll see we have a quantity drop down here with various ranges. Now, out of the box, Commerce gives you just a text field. So you can enter your quantities in there. But for this particular project, they wanted to only have certain quantities available. And these vary per product variation as well. So if I choose this one, you'll see that the quantities actually change to 100 to 500, whereas back at this one, it was 2,500, etc., etc. And so the challenge for me was to come up with a way for these people, for the admins of this site, to be able to manage these option sets without having to write any code or anything else. And I don't think I finished my point about a classic example of Drupal, in that when I needed this, I Googled around for modules, etc., that didn't do it, or that I couldn't find anything that actually did this. So I ended up building this with ECK, and I think recently I saw something that did pretty much the same thing. So as often with Drupal, you might not find it, it's out there, but who knows. But to show you how these actually work, I have a management screen here. Actually, it says manage quantity option sets. I'll fix that for the clients for free. And as you can see, we have option sets that people have defined with the options here. So if you want to add another one to this, actually this is going to log me out, I think. Yeah, it did. So we'll come back to that. Okay, so add quantity option set. So if we want to say, we'll make a big one, 10,000 and 20,000. And here we just enter 10,000 and 20,000, and we can say big selection. And that's only used for admin purposes. So the admins here are adding in one of these. I have a custom quantity option set entity type with only one bundle, because I didn't need multiple ones, of this option set as well. And these are just standard fields that I can pull in through Drupal core. And then when I save that, and we go back to manage these, you now see we have our big option here. And if I want to, I'm not going to know where that is at all. See if I can find this. I think it's called test combo product. If we look here, quantity field, vertical tab, you can see that the options for that are now in the system. So if we save that, we can go back and hopefully talk about demo fail. Hey, there we go, 10,000 to 20,000. And also, yes, I am aware that even though this is a printed product that says add to downloads, back to the end of the project and the client says, we don't want to have printed products. Lo and behold, so I had to change all the buttons to say add to downloads instead. But as you can see, now the clients can define these quantity option sets and reference them as they see fit. And that's all these are. It's entity reference and custom entity types with standard fields. So this, to me, was a much better example. I hope you think so as well, than kind of recreating taxonomy, which is just kind of something silly I've had in the bath. But here's a real life example where I was able to use this for something where you don't need these quantity option sets to show up anywhere, but I needed a UI for clients to be able to manage them. I needed a UI for the clients to be able to choose which ones they wanted, and all of that is built in, because it's just standard Drupal fields and entity references. To move on, another one is everybody's favorite, carousels. Who likes making carousels? Clients like them, though, don't they? Gotta have a carousel, that's the thing. But you know what? As much as I moan about making them, I do. That's what I get paid to do. Clients want it, all right, fine. You're gonna get it in the end if you push me hard enough. And I don't want to have these out there as nodes because I don't want them indexed. I don't want individual things. You're never going to want to see any of these things on their own. So let's make a place to store them. So on this site as well, we have a slideshow here, carousel, whatever you want to call it. There's only one. But if you see up here, we have this slideshow slides menu item. And we have a management screen where we have 3. These ones are marked as not active, so they're not showing up in slideshow. And we can add more as we see fit. So this is a custom entity type of slideshow slide, and this is the text with image slide bundle. I'll walk you through creating some of these, so the kind of relationship between entity types and bundles makes a bit more sense. But as you can see, all they have to do is fill this out: title, subheadline, image, text, yada yada yada. They can choose the location of where the text shows up in relation to the image, and they can choose whether or not this is active or not. I just decided to say active instead of published, just to make things different for the demo, and also because I'm not dealing with books. This is the web. Things are active, not published. No one's printing anything, are they? I hope not, anyway. Imagine printing a carousel. I have a lot of clients that print out every email, and you show up at a meeting and they print it out. I always wondered if anyone's going to print out a carousel and then go, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Hasn't happened yet. So if we want to add another one to this, if we go over here to the configuration, we'll see we have this slideshow slide. I keep losing my place here. And we have the bundle of text with image slides. So if we add another bundle, we'll just say text only. Not that you would want a text only slide. But here we go, adding another bundle. So now we have the text with image slide and text only. So once again, these are similar to content types. So we can have different fields on either one of those. So if we go back to the text only one and then manage fields, we can, well, there's nothing here yet, so we'll just add a body field or something. Why do I not have, I'll just use this one, whatever this is. Ah, screw it, we'll add a new one. Actually, we'll probably want to make that required since it's the only field on the thing. If they want to have a blank one, they can have a blank one. So now if we go to add one of these, you'll see very similar thing. Hey, we can add this, and now we have another slideshow slide type that we can then put into our carousels. To walk you through exactly how we kind of create another one, let's add a new type of like a carousel slide, just as an example. So this is to declare the actual entity type. So this is like being able to declare nodes as something, or being able to declare users as something. So we'll call this one a carousel slide, just to make things really confusing. And if we wanted to have multiple bundles, or if we didn't want a bundle automatically created called carousel slide, we can specify a new one there. We only want one for now, so we'll just stick with that. You get to pick your default properties that these will all come with. These are all very useful: title, author, created, changed, mostly just for admin purposes. And if we save that, now we have a new entity type. So if you go to the carousel slide, we can then manage the fields on that. And once again, just like new content types, now we have our own thing that we're telling what data we want, and we can decide how we want to use it. And then we can make the management screens and everything else with views, because that's all this is. is a view with views bulk operations. And a nice thing about this is this active and not active and everything else is that this all integrates out of the box because it's views, and we can make custom ways of showing these, or custom operations with rules. Since these are entities, they integrate with the rules module. So as you'll see, these ones aren't active, and if we wanted to, let's deactivate this one real quick. I'm sure you've probably all seen stuff like this before, but if we confirm this, set sure it runs, and now this one is no longer active. And once again, much like published and unpublished, that's how we're just kind of deciding which ones are actually going to show up in the slideshow. So, but what we don't have here is anything to actually activate these. So I'll walk you through adding rules for that. And to do so, there's just use create rules components. And as you'll see, we have this set slide not active one. So we'll create another one. We need to have a rule. And we'll say set slide active. And our data type will automatically show up because it's just an entity of slideshow slide. And we'll add a label and a machine name. And that's all we have to do. And since that active or not active, that Boolean is just a field, the way rules works is we have to check that that field, that the entity has the field first, and the entity that we're going to check is the slideshow slide, and the name of the field is the slide status field. So we're going to check that it has the field, and then in our action, we're going to set a data value, and specifies the data to be modified, slideshow slide, status. That's the status field that we have. And so if you want this to be active, we're going to tick the box. And there we go. Go back to our components. Now we have this slide active, not active. And if we refresh over here, you'll see it doesn't work. I was fooling you. So if we have to go back and now edit the view to add that in. But before we do so, this is another great thing about just hooking into existing items, is that there's access control for this component that we're creating. Maybe you don't want everybody that has access to the slides to be able to activate or deactivate, or what other kind of components you might want to come up with for this. So we're going to configure access for this, and we'll say the content admin user. I had one earlier that deleted, so I guess that's why I remembered it. And we'll give the content admin, that's the role I'm logged in with over here, the ability to do so. So they have that permission. And if we now manage the view, we have slideshow slide bulk operations here. If we edit that, we can edit the bulk ops area. And you'll see we have this set slide active rule. And we're going to make the label activate, which was already in there. I put that one in the oven earlier. And if we refresh here, now we have an activate option. So if I take these two, I activate them, and we then go back to the slideshow, the carousel. You'll see that now those are active. So we've basically created or recreated something which is very similar to this, the content page and these update options, etc. But it's only for us. It's what we needed, because the defaults that Drupal provides and for managing content and the defaults that ECK module provide are okay, but being able to customize this all through the UI, as we've just seen, no code necessary. You can build out custom ways to store your data, custom ways to manage your data, and custom ways to perform operations on your data, all with just Drupal contrib modules. Well, we've already done that. So we've already done this as well. So the only steps we need, as we just walked through, I'll talk you through this again, to create our entity types is just to create it, add the bundle, pick your properties, and add your fields. That's it. 4 steps to success, all through the Drupal UI. You create the views. It's really great since all the integration is built in. You can add access control and all these things. You can add access control on the rules components, so different roles can actually fire off different components. Views bulk operations makes all the best admin screens you can. Obviously, this is all demo stuff for Drupal 7. Drupal 8, all the core management screens are all views and using bulk operations anyway. So in 8, you'll be able to do a lot of this stuff with core. Still building sites in 7, you can do all this stuff now with views and VBO. All through the UI. You can create rules and stuff as well. And that's the end of that. Some catches you might want to notice. Title on these, you forget where I am. When you add these, the title isn't an actual field. Like, for example, if I were to go back to the fields here, we don't have a title option, so you can't rearrange the title or anything like that. Or if you want to put the title into a different field set or a vertical tab somewhere, on content types you can. For example, content types vertical fields, you'll see how we can take the title field anywhere we want. ECK, as of right now, you can't do that. There's ways around that. I won't get too far into them, but it's something to think in mind, to keep in mind if you want to customize your forms a lot. And the title actually gets added to the content variable. So, if we do look at these, since they do come within their own page, I must have gotten out of that if I create a demo one real quick. Sorry, a bit disorganized. If we add one of these new ones, there's the demo fail. If we add a new one, see where this one says "I love you." Since this was in a toilet in a really good pub in Brighton. If you're in town, go to the Basket Maker's Arms. It would often say "I love you" below that because it's in the content variable for some reason. But that's actually really easy to get rid of in just one preprocessed function. Just set the access false on it in the content variable, and then that title will no longer show up. Although chances are you're probably going to be using views or references or something like that, so you can probably get rid of it other ways as well. But that's a pretty good way of doing so. If you delete, and if I delete this one of these here, normally it would try to redirect me back to one of these management screens here, which isn't ideal. But you can override that with rules quite easily to set the destination that you want to redirect to. I want to redirect back to this custom admin screen, so let's hope it works. Yay! I want to get sent back here when I delete something, not to the other admin screen, which I don't really like. But with rules, you can override that, which is quite easy. And the delete button for these, if you're viewing them on their own, is up here in the tab. Whereas normally with nodes, you edit and you go to the bottom and you click delete there. So there's a bit of a UI difference in that as well. And since these do actually create pages, since everything in Drupal will, as a representation of it, you might want to just adjust the meta tags for those with context module or something along those lines to make sure they don't get indexed, because you don't want people landing on these. But that's going to be the same thing for if you're using media as well. For all of those pages, you might want to do that as well. Any questions? Yep.
Does it integrate well with features?
Yeah, very well. Everything's exportable. Everything I've done with features with them over the years seems to be quite reliable as well. So, and that's just standard features kind of stuff. So they work pretty good. Heck, that question gets asked every time. I should just add it to the to the damn talk.
Is a block an entity? Can a block be an entity?
Well, blocks aren't entities already. That's where the bean module comes in. There's a module called bean, which is block entities aren't nodes, which allows you to do lots of things like I've just shown and similar things to content types, in that you can have block types that then you can have different fields to and things along those lines. If you didn't want to use bean for some reason, bean I haven't used it in a while. I think the last time I tried to, it didn't integrate with features at all. Since I was relying on it.
I installed it and it crushed my system.
Yeah, but I was having problems with that. So yeah, so a workaround actually is you can create your own kind of entity types here, and then just use views to create blocks of them, and then that would expose it to the block system.
Okay.
So I mean that's quite useful. And that's, like, you know, that's if you want to use the block system like in a sidebar or something like that. But otherwise, if you just want to use fields, just use entity reference. I use block reference module a lot for various modules that output blocks, or things that are already in blocks. It can be quite useful. But if you have a custom entity type and you don't really need to use the block UI or context to place these things, you don't need to make them blocks. They can just be these entities, and then you can just use entity reference to put them wherever you want. But then if you did want to expose them to the block system, just make a view of them with a block display, and then it's exposed to the block system. You can use it everywhere else. Anyone else?
Is this going to be Drupal core in 8?
I don't know really at all where this actually stands in 8. As far as ECK goes, we can Google it.
Is ECK a module then for Drupal?
Yep.
Okay.
It's you know, much as you know, CCK was back in the day to kind of bring this functionality, because all of this functionality is built into Drupal core, and so a lot of it comes from the entity API module as well. So I think all of that is now going to be in Drupal 8 core. But what was lacking in Drupal 7 especially is a UI for this. So, you know, all the stuff in here is mostly baked into 7 core, but there's no UI for it. So what ECK provides is a way of doing all this through the UI and configuring it through the UI. And you can use it programmatically as well. There's it offers its own great API for managing this stuff as well. So if you want to declare your own entity types, you need to do it in code. It provides a lot of stuff for you outside of that. Like, you get all the forms for free and things along those lines, so you don't then have to build that into your custom entity types. So if you want to declare your stuff in code, you can still hook into ECK and get all the other power of ECK for free on top of that. So you kind of get the best of both worlds there. Anyone else? Cool, let's end this. Thank you very much.